Welcome, deep divers. Have you ever just stopped and wondered what's really going on when you, I don't know, simply see a red apple? Or make a decision? Or even just think about something abstract?
Right, we're constantly swimming in this sea of information, aren't we?
Yeah.
Facts, data, experiences.
Exactly. But sometimes it feels like we're missing the blueprint.
Yeah.
You know, the actual architecture of how our minds make sense of it all. What if there was a way to really unlock the foundational structure of our experience? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating deep dive. We're looking at excerpts from Edmund Husserl's Phenomenological Psychology lectures, specifically from the summer semester of 1925.
Now that title, Phenomenological Psychology Lectures, it does sound a bit heavy, maybe even intimidating.
It does, yeah. But trust us, this isn't just some dusty historical text. It's more like a masterclass in philosophical inquiry. It's this incredibly rigorous exploration that tries to cut through centuries of assumptions, really, to ask, how do we actually understand the mind?
What are its fundamental building blocks? How does it all connect to everything we perceive and experience?
It's kind of a quest, isn't it, for those big aha moments about the very nature of consciousness itself.
Absolutely. And what's truly revolutionary here, I think, is Husserl's specific aim in these lectures. He isn't trying to do empirical psychology in the way we often think of it now, with experiments, data collection, that sort of thing.
Right, not lab coats and surveys.
No. And he's also not exactly doing transcendental philosophy in its broadest sense, which might deal with the absolute universal conditions for any knowledge whatsoever.
Okay, so what is he doing then?
He's doing something quite unique, something foundational. He's trying to clarify the essential concepts of psychology itself, laying the intellectual groundwork, if you like, for how we even think about mental life.
Before the empirical work can even begin properly.
Precisely. It's about getting our core understanding straight first, making sure our concepts are sharp, precise, and actually reflect the phenomenon of experience as we live it.
That makes so much sense, and that's why this deep dive feels so crucial, right? If you, listening out there, have ever felt maybe overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of information, or maybe you just wanted a clearer, deeper understanding of what experience truly means.
Not just what we experience, but how we experience it.
Exactly, the how. Then this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to try and peel back the layers of everyday perception, of scientific theory, to get at the pure essence of how we know, how we perceive, and ultimately, how we are in the world.
It's a big task, but a fascinating one.
So let's begin. Where do we start? Maybe with the context. What was happening when Husserl was writing this?
Yeah, context is key here. To really get Husserl's contribution, you need to understand the intellectual climate of his time. We're talking late 19th, early 20th century.
Okay.
And there's this palpable sense of crisis, really, in the field of psychology, the dominant approach, the quote-unquote new psychology of the era.
The one trying to be scientific.
Exactly. Yeah. It was desperately trying to model itself on the natural sciences, especially physics. It aimed to explain mental life by breaking it down into supposed fundamental elements, bits of sense data, feeling data.
Like mental atoms?
Kind of, yeah. And then trying to figure out the causal laws for how these elements combined and interacted.
Very true.
Very much a cause and effect model, treating the mind almost like a complex machine.
Which sounds plausible on the surface, maybe.
Sure. Well, it did have some practical successes. Things like early industrial psychology came out of it. It definitely gained this veneer of scientific exactness.
Right.
But beneath the surface, this radical skepticism started brewing. And the core criticism was pretty damning. It was basically that this new psychology was utterly blind, as Husserl put it, to the unique essential species of psychic life.
Blind how? What was it missing?
It was missing the fundamental nature of mentality as an intentionally active subjectivity. The idea that our minds aren't just passive receivers like cameras recording data, but that they're active shapers, constantly directed towards something, forming mental constructs, building cultural communities. It fundamentally couldn't explain mental facts because it was using categories that just didn't fit consciousness itself, trying to measure mind stuff with a physics ruler, basically.
Okay, so there's this dominant scientific psychology, but it's being heavily criticized for missing the essence of mind. Who is doing the criticizing?
Well, this skepticism was championed by thinkers like Wilhelm Dilthey, and also the emerging phenomenological movement that Husserl himself was part of. Dilthey, for example, proposed a very different approach, a descriptive analytic psychology.
Descriptive analytic, what does that mean?
Instead of chasing causal explanations, like trying to link every thought to a specific brain state.
Which they couldn't really do then anyway, right?
Not with any precision, no. Dilthey argued we should focus on inner experience and understanding. The German word he used was Verstehen.
Verstehen, understanding.
Yeah. His point was, look, if you want to understand a work of art, you don't dissect the artist's brain chemistry. You try to project yourself into their living and striving, their perspective.
You try to understand it from the inside, so to speak.
Exactly. He believes psychic connections are lived, they're directly accessible to us, and they're open to description and analysis. For Dilthey, there was this famous distinction. Nature is explained, or Claren, but human mental life is understood, verstehen.
And that understanding was key for
Absolutely foundational for what he called the Geisteswissenschaften, the human sciences, the sociocultural sciences, history, literature, art, fields where meaning and intention are paramount.
Okay, so Dilthey offers an alternative. Focus on understanding inner experience. Did Husserl just jump on board with that?
Well, Husserl respected Dilthey's turn towards inner experience. Definitely. It was a move in the right direction. But he found Dilthey's approach ultimately lacking a crucial element.
Rigor. How so?
While Dilthey's Verstehen could give you insights into individual situations, like understanding the motivations behind a specific political decision or a scientific discovery, Husserl felt it struggled to yield universally psychological laws.
Ah, so it was too particular, too focused on individual cases.
That was the risk, yes. It could end up being just a collection of vague empirical generalizations, as Husserl saw it, or maybe just a natural history of historical forms of mind, a kind of inductive morphological typology.
Okay, basically cataloging different types of minds or experiences without getting to the underlying universal rule.
Exactly. Dilthey, in Husserl's view, lacked a systematic method for what Husserl called generic essential description on the basis of intuition, a way to move beyond the individual stories to discover universal, necessary insights about the structure of mind itself.
That's a really sharp critique, and it makes me wonder, when we try to understand human behavior today, maybe in psychology, sociology, or even just in our daily lives, how often do we kind of settle for those individual stories, those anecdotes or case studies?
Without really searching for the deeper, underlying universal patterns that might govern them.
Yeah. Are we sometimes missing that essential structure by focusing too much on the contingent particulars, the sort of what-ifs instead of the must-bes?
It's a very relevant question, I think. Husserl was really pushing for that deeper level.
So who else influenced Husserl in finding this more rigorous path?
Another absolutely pivotal figure was Franz Brentano, who was actually Husserl's teacher for a time. Brentano introduced a concept that completely changed the game: intentionality.
Intentionality, that's a big word in phenomenology, isn't it?
Huge. For Brentano, intentionality was the fundamental characteristic of psychic life. The core idea is that consciousness is consciousness of something.
Consciousness of something.
Yeah. He argued this was given quite immediately to the evidence of internal experience before all theories. Put simply, it means your mind is never truly blank, right? Every mental act, whether you're perceiving, thinking, desiring, judging, fearing, it's always directed toward an object, an idea, a goal, a feeling.
So it's not just this passive awareness floating around. It's always aimed at something.
Precisely. It's always about something. That directedness, that aboutness is intentionality.
Wow. Okay, that does sound like a game changer. How did Husserl take that idea?
He ran with it. For Husserl, this insight consciousness is always of something became the absolute central theme of psychology. He saw immediately that consciousness wasn't just a passive receptacle or some kind of self-transforming complex of physical elements, like the natural scientific psychology treated it.
It wasn't just reacting to stimuli.
No. Instead, it's an active, goal-directed performance, always aiming at ideas of truth, always forming synthetic unities, always directed towards objects. And this revelation, he felt, made a truly rigorous transcendental doctrine of consciousness possible. It provided a way to get an intimate foundational understanding of how we perceive and verify objects across all categories of being.
So just to circle back then, when we talk about Husserl's specific contribution in these lectures, the 1925 ones, it's crucial to grasp his precise mission. As you said, he's not doing empirical psychology as such.
Correct. That comes later, once the groundwork is solid. His project here is the phenomenological clarification of the conceptual foundations of psychology.
Okay.
It's what the translator calls a distinctively phenomenological contribution to philosophical psychology or philosophy of mind.
So like philosophy of psychology, setting the stage.
Exactly. Think of it like geometry. Geometry establishes the fundamental, necessary truths about space before a physicist even starts measuring a physical object, right?
Yeah, you need the concepts of point, line, plane first.
Precisely. Husserl is trying to do something similar for the mind. He's establishing the essential necessities, the a priori structures, without which psyche and psychic life would be utterly inconceivable. He's providing the clear, essential concepts, the very definitions upon which any genuine science of the mind must be built.
That's a really compelling way to put it. It's about building the foundation before you build the house.
You got it.
Okay, so if that's the goal, to clarify these foundational concepts, where on earth do you even begin a project like that? It sounds massive.
It is. And Husserl says we need to go right back to square one, back to the world as it's directly given to us in experience, before science starts complicating things with its abstractions and theories.
Back to basics.
A radical return to our most basic, unadulterated, lived experience.
So Husserl's first big radical move then is this insistence on the necessity of the return to the pre-scientific experiential world.
Yes, and to the experience in which it is given. He argues that scientific concepts, like nature or mind, aren't just facts we stumble upon. They are formed only within a theoretical interest that builds upon this more fundamental layer of natural pre-scientific experience.
So we have to start there, with that concretely intuitive unity of the world as we actually live it every day.
We must. To forget this originating field, he thought, is to fall into philosophical absurdities, like thinking of the mind as just some causal add-on to the body, completely missing its unique character.
Okay, this pre-scientific experiential world, what does he call it? Is there a term for it?
He often calls it the world of the natural attitude.
The natural attitude.
Yeah, it's simply the world as we experience it before we start doing any scientific theorizing, before we start measuring or abstracting or categorizing in specialized ways.
Just everyday life.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
In this natural attitude, the world is just posited and continually presupposed in the obviousness of its existence. And that obviousness, he says, stems from the harmony of our constant experience.
Harmony of experience.
It's the world that's the all-inclusive theme of all the sciences which we call sciences of the natural attitude.
Yeah.
Think about it. Before you even conceive of physics or biology, you simply see tables and benches, you feel the warmth of the sun, you hear the sounds around you.
Right, it's just there.
Exactly. This is the original concretion of the world. Objects just enter our sphere of affairs, often without our active contribution. They're simply there for us, and we grasp them by merely looking at it itself. This everyday world, this flowing universe of what's given, that's the primal field.
And science comes later.
Science comes later. Scientists then work out the more abstract true world from this primal field.
You mentioned the harmony of experience. What does he mean by that? Is that why we feel so certain about the world?
That's exactly it. That perpetually there for all of us. Quality comes from this harmony of experience. It's the bedrock for our fundamental certainty in the world's existence.
It's not just my perceptions lining up.
No, it's more than that. It's about the continually progressing and concordant experience that makes the world seem perpetually there for all of us.
Right.
It's the unwavering conviction that our experiences will continually admit of being singled out for experience as a harmonious unity.
And that others can confirm it.
Yes, allowing for intersubjective confirmation. It's that deep-seated, often unconscious horizon presumption, as he calls it, that experience can always be put into play again, that all horizons can eventually be opened, that everything will ultimately align.
It must lead to one single, coherent world.
That's the underlying conviction, yes, that our experiences are coherent and verifiable by others. And that conviction underpins all objective sciences.
Okay, so we have this primal field of immediate experience, and then science builds a more abstract, true world on top of it.
Right. In contrast to this immediate flowing experience, the true world that scientists construct is what Husserl calls a higher product of knowledge. It's a theoretical formation which achieves an ideality of truth, meaning it's an idealized abstract model of reality.
Like the laws of physics, maybe.
Exactly. The scientific world, with its exact measurements and abstract laws, has its original raw material in that immediately given pre-scientific experiential world.
So science doesn't start from nothing or from pure theory. It always starts from the world as we already live it.
That's his point. It's a fascinating insight, isn't it? That even the most rigorous sciences are ultimately built upon our most basic, taken for granted, everyday experiences.
It really is. But is this pre-scientific world just messy? A jumble of impressions? Or did Husserl think it had its own structure?
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't just saying it's a chaotic collection of sensations. No, he believed this world possesses not just a contingently factual structure, but an a priori necessary structure.
A priori necessary, meaning it has to be that way.
Yes. There's the generic formal system, he argued, that permeates all possible variations of experience. It prescribes in advance the corresponding systematic form for any possible science of the world. It's like finding the underlying operating system beneath all the different applications we run on it.
Okay, so what are some elements of this universal structure?
Well, the most fundamental ones he identifies are space and time. He calls them all-inclusive forms and the most universal structures of the world.
Not just things we happen to observe, but necessary conditions.
Exactly. They must belong to it, however we imagine our experience continued, whatever the world might turn out to contain. They are the fundamental forms of distribution, essential to the universal style of the experiential world. They are necessary conditions for anything to even appear to us as being out there, as existing.
Makes sense. Space and time. Anything else?
Hand in hand with space and time comes universal causality.
Cause and effect.
But understood very broadly as an all-inclusive mutual relatedness in affecting and being affected that connects all realities within the world. It means that all facts in any possible natural universe stand under laws.
Even if we don't know what those laws are.
Right. Even if we don't know the specific content of the laws a priori, the very idea of a world implies this underlying necessary connection, this causal fabric binding everything together. It's the fundamental expectation that things don't just happen randomly. There's an order.
Okay, space, time, causality. These are big universal structures. What about the specifics of our perception?
This brings us to a really insightful concept Husserl introduces: empty horizons.
Empty horizons, what are those?
Think about it. When you perceive something right now, say, the screen you're looking at, your immediate, finite field of actual perception, is always surrounded by these empty horizons.
Meaning, the stuff I'm not seeing right now.
Exactly. The unperceived, unknown aspects that always surround your immediate experience. But crucially, they're not just nothing. They actively imply further possibilities of experience.
Like knowing there's a back to the screen, even though I can't see it?
Precisely. Or knowing there's more to the room than what's in your direct line of sight. Or more to a person than what they're showing you in this moment. Husserl says these horizons are not nothing, but a character of the substrate pole, an emptiness consciously present in it. It's the inherent open-endedness of all perception.
And why is that open-endedness so important?
Because it actively guides our anticipations. Every object, even as it appears with definite features, is also determined in advance, as he puts it, by an empty horizon of yet unknown features.
So we're always kind of expecting more.
Yes, it's an indeterminately universal anticipation, which subtly guides our expectations and is gradually filled in by progressing perceptions. The existence of these horizons is a fundamental, a priori necessary structural form of experience itself. It's a realm of real possibilities that continuously shapes and enriches our understanding. It's why you can look at a house and anticipate what might be around the corner, even if you've never been there before. Your perception is already reaching into that horizon.
That's fascinating. So if this everyday world has these universal structures, space, time, causality, these active empty horizons, how do we actually uncover them with philosophical rigor? Especially if they're often kind of hidden beneath the surface. How do we get at the essence of things?
Now you're asking the million-dollar question. That's where Husserl's unique and really powerful method comes in, a method he called ideation, or sometimes seeing essences.
Ideation, seeing essences. Okay, this sounds central.
It absolutely is. This is a cornerstone of his whole philosophy. Seeing essences, or ideation, he presents it as the genuine method for grasping the a priori.
The a priori. Remind us what that means again.
Simply put, a priori means known before or independent of specific experiences. It refers to those unconditionally necessary and universal truths that don't depend on checking particular empirical facts. They're fundamental and apply to any possible experience, whether it actually happens or not.
They come first.
They are preceding in their validity all establishments based on experience, as he says.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about the Pythagorean theorem. It's one single proposition, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared for a right triangle. It doesn't matter who thinks it or where or when.
It's just true.
It's just true. It describes a necessary truth about all possible right triangles. It's not a real event happening in the universe.
Yeah.
It doesn't occur here and then repeat over there. It's what Husserl would call an irreal or ideal object.
Yeah.
A truth that holds universally and necessarily. So, Husserl's a priori psychology aims to do something similar. Establish what is essentially necessary to psychic life itself, the core structures without which mind and its activities would be utterly inconceivable. Finding the foundational axioms of the mind, if you like.
Right. So how does this ideation method work? How do you see these essences?
The core technique is fascinating. He describes it as variation as the decisive step in the dissociation from the factual by fantasy the eidos as the invariable.
Whoa, okay. Break that down. Variation.fantasy.eidos.
Right. It's basically a process of imaginative experimentation. You start with an example, what Husserl calls a model. This could be an actual thing you're perceiving right now, or even just something you imagine.
Okay, got a model. Then what?
Then you engage in free arbitrary variation using your fantasy. This is the key step. You imagine that model in countless different ways. You transform its factual actuality into pure fiction, liberating it from all the constraints of the real world. Let every fictional transformation stand as an equal possibility.
So just imagine it changing in any way possible.
Any way possible, within certain limits related to what you're investigating. This process generates what he calls an open infinity of variance. You're not trying to actually produce all possible variations. That's impossible. But the process has this character of optionalness, a continuous awareness of, I could continue thus, and so on, optionally.
Okay, so you're creating this huge cloud of possible variations in your mind.
Exactly. And what emerges from this open infinity of variance is the eidos. That's the Greek word for form or essence, is the universal essence, the invariable.
The thing that doesn't change through all the variations.
Precisely. It's what holds up amidst such free variations, without which something of that kind would be altogether inconceivable. It's the what that remains necessarily invariant, the one over many. It's like finding the unchanging core identity of a concept, no matter how much you stretch or distort its specific instances in your imagination.
Can you give a concrete example? This is still a bit abstract.
Sure. Let's take a color. Imagine a specific shade of red, say the red of this book cover here. Now, use your imagination. Vary its shade, make it a deeper maroon than a lighter pink, change its texture, make it rough then smooth. Imagine it as the red of a flower, a red car, a red abstract shape. Keep varying it, but keep the focus on redness.
Right.
What you're trying to grasp through all this variation is the eidos red, that essential quality which is common to all possible reds, actual or imagined.
Ah, the essence of red itself.
Exactly. Now you could broaden the scope. Imagine varying that red object and also a green object. If you vary them both widely, you might grasp a higher level eidos, color, taken universally. You'd recognize what's common to both red and green as colors, despite their difference in specific hue. You're getting at the underlying structural truth.
Okay, that helps. So this method, ideation, how is it different from just generalizing from experience, like seeing lots of red things and saying, okay, red things usually have these properties?
That's a crucial distinction Husserl makes. What you just described is empirical generalization. That finds common features among existing observed instances, finding what all the red apples you've actually seen have in common. It yields a universal for just these observed reds, or maybe a probable generalization about future reds based on past experience. It's based on observation of actualities.
Right.
Ideation, however, through this process of infinite imaginative variation, aims to grasp pure red, taken universally as eidos. This eidos encompasses an infinity of possible single instances, not just actual ones. It gives you the conviction that every instance, actual or merely possible, must participate in that essence to be read at all.
So it's moving from describing what is to understanding what must be for something to be that kind of thing at all.
Exactly. It's a profound shift from describing actualities to understanding pure possibilities and their underlying necessities.
And the goal is to get to the pure eidos.
Yes. The ultimate goal is the purity of the eidos. To achieve this, factual actuality, the specific red apple you started with has to be treated as completely irrelevant. You elevate it to the status of pure possibility. You enter what Husserl calls a pure fantasy world of absolutely pure possibilities.
So you consciously ignore the real world.
You have to consciously exclude any secret restriction to the actual world. If you're varying tones, for instance, but you secretly assume they must be tones audible to humans on Earth, you're limiting the eidos. True purity comes when you consciously put the factual world out of play, freeing the horizon of variance from all acceptance based on real-world experience. It's like running an experiment in a mental laboratory where only essential structures remain.
Wow. That's a really demanding mental exercise.
It is.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how often our everyday assumptions about what something is, its nature, its definition, just come from seeing it happen repeatedly, empirically.
Rather than from this deeper imaginative exploration of its essential nature.
Yeah. Are we maybe mistaking what's just typical or common for what's fundamentally necessary? Confusing habit with essence?
It's a constant risk, Husserl would argue.
Just quickly, you mentioned variation. Does Husserl distinguish that from, say, alteration, like something changing over time?
Good question. Yes. He makes a clear distinction. Alteration refers to changes in a real identical thing over time, like a leaf changing color from green to yellow in autumn. It's about a single thing undergoing continuous change.
Okay.
Variation, in his method, refers to imagining different possibilities of a certain kind. It's exploring a realm of free optionalness in fantasy to grasp the essential structure that holds for any conceivable instance of that kind, regardless of time. For instance, he notes that a color can only alter into another color. It can't alter into a tone. This reveals an underlying essential genus, color, that it cannot transgress through alteration. Variation explores the possible, alteration tracks the actual change of an individual.
Got it. That's a helpful clarification. And this method, ideation, you can apply it to anything.
That's the power of it. It's not just for simple sensory things like colors or tones. Husserl argues that ideation can be exercised wherever and at whatever level objectivities become given to us in original intuition.
So even complex ideas.
Yes. Things like the pure idea of a statement or the meaning of a statement, or even incredibly complex concepts like the pure idea of a human being. This method, he believed, provides the sure clue for articulating the possible sciences of the world, grounding them upon the essential structure of the experiential world itself. And crucially, it establishes the fundamental significance of the science of mind by providing its essential concepts. It's a universal tool for uncovering the blueprint of knowledge.
Okay, so we have this powerful method, ideation, for getting at the essence of things. How does Husserl then apply this to start breaking down the different kinds of things we find in our world, especially that big divide between the physical and the mental? How does he deconstruct reality using this lens?
Right. So our journey into the structures of experience using this method still requires us to start somewhere concrete. Husserl emphasizes the necessity of beginning with the experience of something singular.
Start with one example, like the model for variation.
Exactly. Any analysis of the world's structures, whether it's an empirical description of facts or eidetic grasping of essences, has to begin by considering individual, exemplary, real things. And this consideration is always accompanied by an awareness of those broader, open horizons of experience we talked about.
Why start with the singular?
Because fundamentally, our experience of single things, grasping them, noticing them, precedes our experience of the world as a whole, as a total encompassing object. You encounter individual trees before you comprehend the concept of the forest, right?
Makes sense. We build up from particulars.
And underlying this experience of singular things is what Husserl calls passive synthesis.
Passive synthesis, what's that?
It's that continuous, often unnoticed, unforced agreement of multiple experiences that naturally yields the unity of an experiential object as something consistently existing.
Like how seeing a table from different angles just automatically feels like seeing the same table.
Exactly that. It's that subtle background process where different perceptions, seeing it, touching it, walking around it, just coalesce into the stable, singular experience of the table. It's this continuous support from passive synthesis that then allows us to engage in more active thought processes, like forming universal concepts about tables or making judgments about this specific table. Passive agreement comes first.
Okay. So starting from these singular things given through passive synthesis, what distinctions does he make?
He introduces a really fundamental distinction right away between self-sufficient realities and non-self-sufficient realities.
Self-sufficient versus non-self-sufficient. Right.
Self-sufficient realities are concrete individuals, things in the broadest sense they can, in principle, exist on their own. Think of a rock, a tree, a person.
They don't need anything else to be what they are.
Fundamentally, yes. Non-self-sufficient realities, on the other hand, are modifications or moments of things. They cannot exist independently, but require a substrate, a foundation.
Like the color red needing a surface.
Perfect example. A specific color is non-self-sufficient. It can't just float in space on its own. It needs a physical thing, a wall, a canvas, an apple to be its substrate. These non-self-sufficient moments, like color or shape or texture, ultimately trace back to single, primal, self-sufficient realities. It's a way of analyzing the constituent elements of anything real.
Okay, that distinction seems clear. But what makes something a real unity or a thing in the specific sense for Husserl? Is it just being self-sufficient?
Not quite. He clarifies that being a real unity or a thing, in the specific sense, isn't just about being a sensuous configuration that we can intuit. It's defined by being a unity of causality.
A unity of causality, meaning?
Meaning it preserves stable causal properties amidst changes. A real thing is an identical substrate of causal properties, exhibiting a stable style of behaving causally in its existence and interactions. It's not just about what it looks like, but how it acts and reacts and endures through those interactions according to certain predictable patterns or laws.
So its identity is tied to its causal behavior.
Very much so. That's what makes it a stable thing within the flow of experience.
So examples would be?
Well, a stone, the sun, even our entire solar system can be considered a real thing in this sense, because they function as identical substrates of causal properties maintaining a causal unity.
Okay, physical objects.
But Husserl expands this significantly. A human being is also a real thing in this sense. And so is an association, like a club or a society or even a people.
How can an association be a thing, like a stone?
Because they too exhibit a kind of causal unity within their respective environments. They have stable properties, they interact, they endure over time according to certain internal dynamics and external relations. The world of experience for Husserl is articulated into these single real things, which can then unite into higher order complexes, all rooted in this pervasive causal structure, this fundamental interconnectedness.
Right, so reality is layered, from simple things to complex systems, all linked by causality. Where do minds fit into this picture?
He focuses particularly on psychophysical realities. These are those things that are animated or psychically live, primarily human beings and animals, as they appear within the experiential world.
Psychophysical body and mind together.
Exactly. These subjects are concrete, real things, definitely. But their characteristics are a fascinating blend. Their psychic properties are deeply intertwined with their underlying corporeal, physical ones. He talks about mental aspects like sensuous feeling, perceiving, thinking, valuing, willing, striving. These are all examples of living psychically. And these manifest an abiding psychic habitus, a kind of stable disposition or character over time.
So mind and body are linked. Is one more fundamental than the other in how we experience them?
Husserl points out what he calls a greater self-sufficiency of the corporeal vis-a-vis the psyche.
Meaning the body is more self-sufficient than the mind.
In terms of how we experience it, yes. Psyches, he argues, cannot be experienced except as animating one's own or another's body. The psychic, the mental in itself, isn't extensional. It doesn't take up space directly.
Right.
It only gains a secondary participation in spatiality and locality through its connection with a physical body.
So we only encounter minds and bodies.
In our experience, yes. And while the physical body is a unity arising from inductive causality, the laws of physics and biology, the psyche is not merely that. It has its own unique, essential concepts. It's a self-contained unity, even though it's interwoven with that inductive causality of the body. This really highlights the special, non-reducible nature of mental life for him. How does our own body fit into this? Is our experience of our own body different? Radically different and absolutely central. Our own body functions as the original body, the primary presenting organ of perception. It's the unique locus where our psychic life directly governs and is felt to govern. It's perceived by us alone in an originally proper and self-perceived animation.
We experience it from the inside.
Precisely. It is here that we experience the unity of body and psyche most directly, as a lived body, live. Our perception of another's body and psyche, on the other hand, is given through what he calls analogizing experience. It's essentially an inductive inference to their inner psychic life, based on their physical manifestations, their expressions, their actions, their words.
So we see their body move, hear their words, and infer a mind like ours behind it.
That's the basic idea. It's an indirect understanding, mediated by the physical, unlike the direct internal sense we have of our own mental life governing our own body.
That distinction is really powerful, isn't it? Between experiencing our own body-mind unity directly from the inside and experiencing others indirectly from the outside. It makes you wonder how profoundly that shapes our whole understanding of reality.
It really does. How does that immediate internal access shape our view, and how different is it when we try to grasp another's inner life, which we can only ever access through their outward physical manifestations? There's a fundamental asymmetry there.
Definitely something to think about. So the mental is deeply intertwined with the physical in living beings. But you mentioned earlier that mentality shows up elsewhere too, not just in animating bodies.
Yes, absolutely. And this is another fascinating area Husserl explores, how the mental makes its appearance in our experiential world beyond living bodies, specifically through what he terms cultural objects.
Cultural objects, like tools, art, buildings.
Exactly, those kinds of things. He says these objects, even lifeless ones, include or embody, as it were, a mental endowment, making them mentally significant things. They aren't just physical matter, they carry a deeper expressive sense, a purpose that goes beyond their purely material properties.
How does that work? How can a tool embody mind?
Think about everyday examples. Your desk, the chair you're sitting on, the house you live in, the tools you use, a painting on the wall. When we experience these things, we don't just see them as inert physical configurations of wood or metal or paint.
No, you see a chair as a chair, something for sitting.
Right. In their sensuously experienced shape, their form, and other sensible features, a mental sense is expressed. This sense, which can be quite complex, isn't found next to the material object. It's intrinsically blended in as a sense included in it, and expressed, we might even say impressed in it. It becomes a kind of two-sided object, material on one side, mental sense on the other, but fused together in our experience.
So the chairness isn't just in the wood, it's a meaning we grasp through the wood.
Precisely. The specific character of the cultural object, Husserl says, is that its very being is determined in its being by a relation to a subject. It's not merely physical. It embodies a mental sense or purpose, which is objectified from some subjective performance, some act of creation or intention.
So they originate from minds.
They originate from activities of a creative subjectivity, a sense-forming subjectivity that creates an expression of this sense, a form of purpose. Think about a Gothic cathedral. Its incredibly complex, multiple material articulation isn't just random stone. It's experienced as senseful and comprehended in its sense. Or consider an arrow. Its purpose, its arrowness, while made manifest in its physical shape, arises non-sensuously from aim and will, not from the wood and feather alone. Its purpose made tangible.
That's very different from a purely natural object, like a rock.
Completely different. A purely real thing, like a rock, exists in itself without question of subjects. It just is, regardless of us. But a cultural object, like the arrow or the cathedral, has an objectivity for and between subjects. Its purpose and sense are appropriated by the material object, yes, but they could be repeatedly experienced and understood by any number of subjects within an understanding community.
So it requires interpretation.
It does. The arrow is physically seen, sure, but it's understood in its final sense as an arrow, a projectile born of human intent. The cultural object is inherently intersubjective. Its meaning exists for a community of minds.
What about change? Does the cultural sense change like the physical object does, like if a painting fades?
That's a key point Husserl makes. The cultural sense, unlike psychically real states like a feeling or physical properties, doesn't exhibit proper changes or causality of changes in the same way. While the physical thing, the canvas and paint, undergoes changes over time and is subject to physical causal laws, the cultural sense, in its identity, determines its invariant sense of purpose.
So the meaning of the artwork doesn't fade just because the paint does.
Exactly. If the painting's colors fade and someone experiences it differently, Husserl would say the work of art itself, as an aesthetic picture, hasn't fundamentally changed its cultural sense. Rather, a different physical artifact is now being experienced, or perhaps the current experience is simply a false or incomplete one compared to the original intention or ideal. The cultural sense, though obviously related to time and its creation and apprehension, doesn't have proper temporal extension with an extending temporal fullness, like a physical process. It endures as an ideal meaning.
Okay, so there's this layer of ideal meaning attached to physical objects. Does Husserl suggest we can sort of strip that away?
He does. He talks about a purifying reduction, where we consciously abstract from these subject-related irreal characters, these cultural senses and purposes, to try and attain a closed realm of pure reality, which is essentially the material world studied by physics and chemistry.
Like a scientist trying to ignore the chairness and just see the wood molecules.
Precisely. Think of it as stripping away all the cultural or personal meanings from an object to get down to its pure physical essence, its material substrate. This material world is considered prior in itself to the world of culture, because culture presupposes humans and animals, which in turn presuppose physical matter.
So it allows science to focus just on the material.
Yes, it allows for the investigation of a pure physis, a pure nature, as a kind of nuclear, abstractly dependent structure within the world, even if a world of pure nature might never exist entirely on its own, separate from mind. This abstraction helps natural scientists focus solely on material realities and their causal laws without getting tangled up in human meanings and purposes.
That's a really powerful mental experiment, that purification. And it makes you think, doesn't it? How does that purpose we pour into our creations, how does it manage to endure even as the physical materials change or decay?
And how does that purpose define the reality of the object in such a different way than, say, the laws of physics define the reality of a stone? It seems to give human meaning a unique kind of permanence, an ideal persistence.
It really does. So this process, this purifying reduction where the natural scientist tries to exclude everything merely subjective to get at pure nature, that brings us to a really crucial, almost paradoxical point, doesn't it? What happens if we turn our gaze back toward that subjective realm that was so carefully bracketed out? How do we understand the intricate dance between what we call objective and subjective then?
Exactly. That's the next big challenge Husserl tackles. In the typical attitude of the natural scientist, there's this fundamental opposition of the subjective and the objective.
Objective good, subjective bad. Or at least subjective needs to be filtered out.
Pretty much for their specific purposes. The natural scientist strives for objective truth, which means systematically abstracting from all merely subjective elements, individual perspectives, feelings, biases. Their goal is to define what is true for nature as such in its existence.
And how do they achieve that?
Through intersubjective agreement and a persistent harmony of experience that is demonstrable in intersubjective agreement. What counts as conclusive actuality for the scientist is that which remains safe from correction in arbitrarily extended experience, something that holds true for everyone, everywhere, regardless of personal viewpoint. It's about finding the observer-independent facts.
So the subjective in this scientific mindset is often seen almost as contamination, something to be eliminated to get to the purely physical or material reality.
Yes. The natural scientist uses subjective processes, of course, perception, doubt, reasoning, even experiencing illusions or errors, but they use them as methodological tools to refine their objective understanding. These subjective occurrences are not themselves the theme of their investigation.
Like a mathematician uses the subjective activity of counting, but math isn't about the feeling of counting.
Exactly. Mathematics is about quantities and numbers and structures, not the subjective act of thinking about them. It's a necessary methodical exclusion for that discipline.
But there's a problem there, isn't there? A paradox.
There is indeed, and Husserl highlights it very keenly. The paradox is this. The objective world is constituted by excluding the subjective, but that everything subjective itself belongs to the world.
Wait, say that again?
The objective world, the universe of objective truth that the scientist seeks, is built by carefully filtering out the subjective. But that objective world must also contain the subjects themselves, us, and all our subjective characteristics, as objects belonging to it.
So the objective world somehow has to include the subjectivity it tried to exclude.
It seems so. The objective world seems to kind of swim in a milieu of the subjective, as Husserl puts it. It's possible only as a unity formation related to subjects and constituted in the combined subjects. Now, the natural scientists might just shrug this off, right? They focus on their single line of physically objective unities. But for philosophy, this is a critical knot to untangle.
How do you untangle it? What's Husserl's move?
His move is truly profound. He introduces the reflective turn of regard toward the subjective.
The reflective turn, meaning looking inward.
Yes, but in a very specific way. Instead of looking at the object itself, the table, the tree, we redirect our attention to our own perceiving of it. In our normal, everyday, natural attitude, our subjectivity often remains anonymous, right? We're just absorbed in the world, looking through our subjectivity rather than at it.
We don't usually notice the act of seeing, just the thing seen.
Exactly. It's only by this deliberate reflective turn, by turning our glance back from the experience object to the experience and the experiencing subject, that we become intensely aware of these subjective modes, these different ways an object appears to us.
And what do we discover when we make that turn?
We discover this incredible multiplicity of subjective modes through which any single object is given. We become aware of the different perspectives, the different orientations, the shifting appearances. We realize that the object itself is never to be found as something on its own in this multiple series, but that it is always and necessary to be found only as offering itself in these subjective modes.
So the object isn't separate from its appearances?
It is its appearances, in a way, or rather it appears through them. The shape of a thing appears through various shape perspectives. Its color appears through various color perspectives. The object is constituted in the flowing stream of its appearances.
And the big takeaway from that reflection is?
Crucially, reflection reveals the fundamental inseparability of the objective and its changing subjective mode. The purely objective object could not, a priori, be an object of consciousness without these subjective modes. They were always there as lived experiences, essential components of the perception, even if we weren't explicitly paying attention to them before reflecting.
Wow. So the subjective isn't just a filter or noise to be removed. It's the very medium through which objectivity appears to us at all.
That's the radical insight. It fundamentally reshapes our understanding of perception.
Okay, let's drill down into that structure of perception then, using Husserl's lens. It sounds incredibly intricate. Where does he start?
He breaks it down beautifully. Firstly, there's the immediate context. The perceptual field, perceptual space. This is your immediate finite field of actual perception. Right now, the room you're in, what you can see and hear.
Finite. But it feels like space goes on forever.
The potential space feels infinite, yes, because it's always surrounded by that empty horizon of unperceived but possible perceptions. What's behind you, what's outside the window, what's in the next room. But our actual current field of perception at any given moment is always finitely closed, even as it shifts and changes.
Okay, the perceptual field. What's next?
Next, he introduces a crucial concept, Heil, or hyletic data, which function as the matter for intentional functions.
Heil, like raw stuff.
Exactly. Think of it as pure sense data. The raw, uninterpreted sensation of a specific patch of color, a pure tone hitting your ear, a feeling of warmth or pain considered purely subjectively before we even recognize them as something objective. They are the nuclear, raw contents, not yet objectively perceive themselves.
It was just raw sensation before meaning.
Sort of. These hyletic data then become the matter for intentional functions. When our consciousness apprehends them, gives them a character of consciousness, interprets them, they transform into adumbrating presentations of something objective.
Adumbrating, like sketching or outlining.
Yes, like partial profiles or aspects of the object. These intentional characters are essentially characters of the consciousness of something. It's an evident necessity, he argues, that if something spatially objective is seen, it's only possible because these hyletic data are being sensed and are serving this adumbrating function, providing the raw material that our intentional awareness shapes into a perception of an object.
So raw data, Heil, gets shaped by intention into an appearance of an object.
That's a good way to put it. And he also makes a vital distinction regarding what we perceive between immanent and transcendent perception.
Immanent and transcendent.
Immanent perception is perception of what is streaming within our own subjective lived experience itself, like a fleeting thought, a momentary feeling, a sensation as it's being felt. It's grasped adequately, he says, in its full content, never in mere sides or profiles. It's something existing only as streaming, directly and fully present to us, in us.
Okay, perceiving our own mental states. What's transcendent?
Transcendent perception is our normal perception of external objects, tables, trees, other people. These are always given in one side and in ever new sides, never fully or completely in a single perception. There's always that empty horizon, always more to see, more aspects potentially revealable. We can never fully encompass an external object in one go.
We only ever see parts or perspectives of it.
Exactly.
This distinction, immanent versus transcendent, does that help explain the object itself?
It leads directly to another crucial concept. The object is irreal pole.
Irreal pole, not a real pole.
Irreal here means not a concrete part of our stream of consciousness, not like a sensation is. The objective table we perceive, for instance, isn't itself a real event or a physical part within our streaming lived experience. Instead, it's an ideally identical pole that pervades the stream of changing appearances.
An ideal point of reference.
Kind of. It's inseparable from the intentional synthesis of those appearances, but it's the point of identity through them. It's given as pervasively identical, even as the perspectives shift and change. It's almost like the unchanging idea or identity of the table that our consciousness continually constitutes and refers back to across its many fleeting partial appearances. It's the X that the appearances are appearances of.
Okay, that's subtle. The object is like an ideal anchor point for the appearances.
Yes. And this object pole is further articulated into the substrate pole and property pole.
Substrate and property.
The object itself, the table, as enduring identity, is the substrate pole. It's the identical thing that appears from the start and persists throughout the perceptual continuity, yet it gets determined by ever-new features as we perceive more.
And the features are the properties.
Right. These features, its specific color, its shape, its texture, its hardness, are themselves property poles. They are also ideal and non-self-sufficient. They are what they are only as properties of the substrate pole. So the brown surface of the table, for example, is an ideal pole, the surface identity appearing identically even as our perspective changes. But its specific quality, brown, is a property pole, dependent on the table substrate. Both are ideal points of unity within the perceptual flow.
This is getting really intricate. We have the object as an ideal pole with property poles. Where do the empty horizons fit back in?
They fit right back in here. Remember those empty horizons of unknown features? Husserl says they have a positive significance. That horizon is a fundamental character of the substrate pole itself. It's a conscious emptiness that is continually present alongside the known features.
It's part of the object's identity, this unknown aspect.
In a way, yes. It's not a void, but rather an indeterminately universal anticipation that actively guides our expectations and directs future perceptions. Every object is determined in advance by this horizon of potential features, which is then gradually filled in by progressing, though always incomplete, perceptions. And this horizon is specific. The empty horizon for a table anticipates table-like features, not horse-like features. It's how our perceptions are always forward-looking, always expecting more relevant information.
Okay, so perception involves this complex structure of fields, raw data, intentions, poles, properties, and horizons. What about the perceiver, our own body?
He brings that in too, under perception with regard to the perceiver himself. Our body, remember, is the unity of perceptual organs, the presenting organ of perception. This involves our kinesthetic systems, the felt sense of our bodily movements, hands moving, head turning, eyes scanning, walking around. These movements are themselves constituted intentionally and are joined into a total system of bodily awareness and control.
And the body's unique role.
Its unique two-sidedness. It's simultaneously a spatial externality and a subjective internality. It's a physical thing, a body, Körper, that can be seen and touched like other objects, but it's also an internal organ complex, a lived body, live, a habitual system of subjective functions through which we directly experience the world and ourselves acting within it. It's this truly unique bridge between the subjective and the objective.
And finally, how does time fit into all this? Perception happens in time, doesn't it?
Absolutely central. He tackles the problem of temporality. Perception isn't just a static snapshot. Its core is presenting. It makes something present right now, like an enduring musical note, existentially present to consciousness.
The now.
Yes. But this now, this presenting, is continuously modified. It's immediately shaded by retention, which holds on to the immediate past, allowing the just heard part of the note to linger in our awareness, giving it duration. And it's also reaching forward through pretension, which anticipates the immediate future, making us expect the continuation of that note.
So the present moment is thick. It contains the immediate past and anticipates the immediate future.
Exactly. These three presenting, primal impression, retention, and pretension blend seamlessly in our concrete experience to constitute filled time, forming the continuous flow of the experiential world.
And memory. What about remembering things from longer ago?
Beyond this immediate flow, there's recollection, which represents past perceptions, creating a past that can be revisited in memory. And distinct from both is fantasy, which allows for pure possibilities free from any claim to actuality, enabling us to imagine things that never were or might never be. It's a whole temporal structure of consciousness.
That is an incredibly detailed picture of perception. Heil, intention, poles, horizons, body, time. It really makes you think. If every object we experience is this irreal pole constituted by an endless stream of subjective appearances, never fully given, always with that open horizon, what does that really mean for the solid objective reality we usually take for granted?
It suggests a much more dynamic, intricate, co-constituted relationship between our consciousness and the world, than we usually assume, doesn't it? It's not just consciousness reflecting a pre-given world.
No, it seems much more like consciousness actively weaving the world as we experience it. And this incredibly detailed look at perception, it brings us right back to the heart of the subjective, doesn't it? To the I that's doing all this perceiving, constituting, remembering, anticipating.
Precisely. At the very core of this whole intricate web of experience, Husserl places the I pole.
The I pole, the self.
Yes, the unifying center of our subjective life. This is the I of affections and actions, the awake and engaged consciousness that directs its intentions toward objects, gets stimulated and motivated by them. It's the active agent, the self, that grasps, compares, distinguishes, values, wills, decides. It's not just a passive stage for experiences, but an active participant, an actor engaging with the world.
So the I is fundamentally active.
It is. Every actus, every I-centered act, like making a judgment, forming a desire, performing an action, arises from this I pole. However, there's a crucial qualification. Husserl says every actus is restricted to the presupposition that previously the I was affected. Meaning that a passive intentionality, a kind of receptivity, always precedes our active engagement. Before I can actively grasp or judge something, it must have already, in a passive way, exerted some attraction, made some impression on my consciousness, emerged from the background. So our active acts are always grounded in and responses to this prior layer of passive givenness, this receptivity of the I. Activity emerges from passivity.
Okay, that's interesting. The I acts, but only after being affected. What else defines this I?
This brings us to a really profound idea. The identity of the I maintaining its convictions.
Identity through convictions.
Yes. Husserl states that the I has determinate being exclusively as a subject of self-instituted convictions. These convictions aren't just fleeting experiences or opinions. They are enduring properties of the I, the lasting results of its own originally instituting activities, like figuring something out for yourself, or decisions where you freely follow the insights and convictions of others.
So my convictions make me who I am, in a way.
They form the stable core of the I's being, yes. For instance, if you work through and prove a mathematical theorem for the very first time, that piece of knowledge doesn't just vanish afterwards. It persists with me as a conviction.
It becomes part of your mental furniture.
Exactly. When you revisit that theorem later, you're not just reproving it from scratch every time. You're reactivating and confirming a conviction that has become yours, part of your identity. It's a property you now possess.
Where do these convictions come from? Are they all rational?
They can be rooted in rational motives, where something is seen or intuited with evidence and necessity based on clear reasons. But they can also stem from blind motives, as he calls them, things like associative transfers, habits, or suggestions from others, which might be intelligible in how they arose, but lack that direct seeing rationality.
Can adopting someone else's conviction be rational?
Yes. Importantly, he notes that the act of adopting another's conviction and making it one's own, by truly understanding and reproducing their insight, counts as rationally following. Their reason effectively becomes your own reason through your own act of understanding. It's how knowledge and understanding are genuinely shared and internalized within a community.
And our individuality comes out in these convictions and decisions.
Precisely. It's in these decisions, which are based upon convictions, that the individuality of the I makes itself known. The I, he says, preserves an individual style in its motivations and decisions, which forms its individual total character.
A personal style of thinking and choosing.
Yes. The I endures through time, not as an empty stage, but as a personal individuality, a consistently persisting unity amidst the flow of its decisions and changing states. This is analogous, he suggests, to the unity of a real physical thing amidst its changing conditions. This individual style and these character traits emerge from the connections between its motivations and decisions, making its unique individuality manifest. It's what gives each of us our personal signature.
That really makes you think, doesn't it? If our identity, our very self, is rooted so deeply in the convictions we actively institute and maintain, what does that imply about personal growth or even radical change?
Does it mean there's a fundamental persistence, even through profound transformation, as long as the I is the one doing the transforming? Or can we truly shed old convictions and become someone entirely new?
It's a deep question about the enduring core of who we are, isn't it? How much is stable character? How much is open to decision?
It is. And building on this idea of the enduring, unified self, Husserl introduces the concept of the unity of the subject as monad.
Monad. That sounds familiar. Leibniz.
He borrows the term, yeah, but deeply redefines it for his own purposes. For Husserl, the monad describes the self-contained unity of an individual's psychic life. It encompasses its own unique streaming temporality, that flow of attention, presentation, pretension, and all its constituted habitualities.
Habitualities, like habits and abilities.
Exactly. Its passive and active abilities of perception, feeling, memory, intellect, judgment, willing, all the dispositions and capacities that make up its enduring character. These habitualities aren't just external traits. They refer back to the unity of an identical I, the substratum for its unique personal characteristics. The monad is the entire irreducible subjective realm of an individual, with all its history and potential.
So the monad is the whole person's inner world, self-contained.
That's the idea. And it's absolutely crucial to emphasize, as Husserl does repeatedly, that the psyche, conceived as a monad, is not merely a unity arising from inductive causality, like physical nature is often understood, where things are just linked by external association and prediction.
It's not just a bundle of conditioned responses.
No. While the psychic life, being embedded in the spatial world via the body, does exhibit an inductive structure in our experience of it. We can predict behavior to some extent. It is not merely an inductively causal unity. The psyche possesses intrinsic principles for unifying its own multiplicity and for creating ever-new, higher synthetic unities of meaning and purpose. This differentiates it profoundly from purely physical reality. It's a self-organizing, self-constituting realm, not simply a chain of reactions determined from the outside.
Wow. So the mind has its own unique laws, its own way of being unified, distinct from physical causality.
That's the core claim.
This deep dive into the I, its convictions, its character, its monadic unity, it really reveals the profound implications of this phenomenological psychology, doesn't it? It's not just about understanding ourselves better, but it seems to challenge how we classify and organize all of knowledge.
Absolutely. It points towards a science of the mind that finally acknowledges its self-contained, essential, and utterly unique nature, refusing to reduce it to just a complicated subset of natural science.
So after this incredible journey from the crisis in psychology through the pre-scientific world, ideation, reality, culture, perception, what's the big picture? What is the ultimate aim of Husserl's phenomenological psychology, according to these lectures?
He sees it as fundamentally foundational. Foundational both for the natural and for the personal exploration of the psyche and for the corresponding sciences.
Not just another branch of psychology, but the root.
In his view, yes. He even calls it the properly central science that yields all properly psychological knowledge. Its aim is to provide the essential internal insight and understanding of psychic and mental life itself, something that purely external, experimental, or physiological psychology, by its very nature focusing on outward correlates, simply cannot achieve on its own. It gets at the what it's like.
And this foundational role comes from its contrast with natural science.
Exactly. Remember, natural science, in its drive for pure objectivity, systematically reduces reality, or abstracts from it, to the inductive research of physical properties, filtering out all subjective elements to create its objective picture. Phenomenological psychology, however, insists on investigating the psyche purely in itself and for itself, according to its own essence, which is perhaps absolutely self-contained.
It respects the mind's uniqueness.
Yes. It recognizes that the inductive framework, while relevant to how mind interacts with the physical world, does not encompass the true essence of mind. The psyche has its own proper essential closed nexus, its own internal logic and structure that cannot be simply reduced to physical terms or causal laws derived from physics.
And this insight allows for?
It allows for a radical articulation of the sciences of the world. By grounding all sciences ultimately in the essential structures of the experiential world, which includes both nature and mind, phenomenological psychology establishes the essential, non-negotiable place of the science of mind. It provides the originally procured essential concepts, necessary not just for psychology, but for all sciences that deal with the world as experienced by subjects. It's truly a liberation of psychology, he felt, from centuries of prejudice and one-sided views, charting a path for a truly rigorous science of the mental.
Okay, but to achieve this rigorous understanding of the purely subjective, doesn't Husserl introduce another special technique or attitude? Beyond reflection.
He does. This is where the famous and often misunderstood phenomenological reduction comes in. It's also known as adopting the transcendental attitude.
The reduction, what does that involve?
It involves consciously surrendering the natural standpoint, our default assumption that the world exists independently out there. It means consistently thwarting every interest in objective existence.
So you stop believing the world is real. That sounds drastic.
It's not about denying the world's existence in a practical sense. It's a methodological move. You put the experiential acceptance of the factual world out of play. You suspend judgment about its independent reality. By doing this, you elevate all actuality to the level of pure possibility, moving into that pure fantasy world we discussed with ideation in order to uncover the pure eidos, the pure essence of phenomena as they appear to consciousness, regardless of whether they correspond to an external reality. It's suspending belief to focus purely on the structure of experience itself.
Okay, it's a methodological suspension, not ontological denial. And what does this suspension allow you to see?
It allows for a purely subjective mode of consideration, where all objectivity, the table, the world, scientific laws, is viewed purely as a product to be shaped in subjectivity. The reduction makes the proper existence of perception, with all which is really and ideally inseparable from it, the unique theme of inquiry.
So you're not looking at the world anymore, but at how consciousness constitutes a world.
Exactly. It's a profound reorientation of perspective, from the world to the experiencing of the world.
Now, Husserl sometimes talks about transcendental subjectivity. Is that the same as the psychological subjectivity we've been discussing?
That's a crucial distinction he makes, especially later in his work, though the seeds are here. There's a difference between transcendental subjectivity, which becomes the focus of his ultimate philosophical project, Transcendental Phenomenology, dealing with the absolute conditions for any possible experience and knowledge, and psychological subjectivity, which even when studied phenomenologically is still considered as part of the natural world, one type of objective reality among others.
So transcendental is the ultimate philosophical view. Psychological is still within the world.
Roughly, yes. Transcendental phenomenology occupies a unique philosophical space, distinct from all positive or empirical sciences. However, Husserl asserts that the insights gained through transcendental phenomenology are not totally separate. He claims that every one of its propositions admits of being transformed into an a priori psychological proposition in the natural sense.
Meaning the philosophical insights can be translated back to inform a science of psychology.
Yes, with a corresponding change of attitude, dropping the full transcendental suspension. The deep structures uncovered in the transcendental investigation can enrich and ground a naturally objective but essentially informed a priori psychology. So there's this deep transformable relationship where philosophy provides the ultimate grounding for a rigorous science of mind.
How does all this connect to other fields like the humanities or social sciences?
It has immense significance for them, what Husserl often groups as the sociocultural sciences, Geisteswissenschaften. These sciences investigate personalities and their personal formations, history, sociology, literary studies, etc. They typically adopt what he calls a personal attitude.
The personal attitude, as opposed to the natural attitude.
Yes. In the personal attitude, persons and their surrounding world, their meaningful environment, their culture, their interactions are the theme, not nature in the purely physical sense abstracted by the natural scientist. The focus is on how persons behave as persons, how they form communities, create works, understand each other, and imbue the world with meaning.
So the physical world is still there, but viewed differently.
Exactly. Physical things, animals, even human bodies are still present, but they are included only as belonging to the personal surrounding world, as elements within the sphere of human meaning and action. Think about it. For a natural scientist, nature is their theme, meticulously stripped of all merely subjective elements. But from the sociocultural perspective, using the personal attitude, nature itself, and even the activity of the natural scientist can become personal themes, objects of study within the human world of meaning, culture, and history.
That is a really fascinating turn. So even the objective world of the natural scientist can be seen as just one kind of theme within the broader personal world of human culture and meaning.
From that sociocultural standpoint, yes.
Which leads to another really thought-provoking question for everyone listening. If even nature, as conceived by the natural scientist, can be reframed as a personal theme from the sociocultural perspective, what does that imply about the fundamental unity of our experiential world?
Does it mean the sharp distinctions we often draw between objective nature and subjective meaning are perhaps more about the attitude we adopt, the lens we choose to look through, rather than indicating fundamentally separate realities?
It certainly seems to point that way. What's Husserl's final take on this? One world or many?
His conclusion is clear. There is one unique experiential world. But what becomes thematic for us within that world and how we understand it depends entirely on our attitude, whether we adopt the natural attitude of everyday life, the purifying attitude of the natural scientist, the personal attitude of the sociocultural sciences, or the radical reflective attitude of phenomenological psychology, or even transcendental phenomenology.
So the attitude determines the reality we focus on.
It determines what becomes thematic and how it's understood. The phenomenological reduction, for instance, can switch off the natural attitude to reveal the underlying personal and subjective constitution of everything. These aren't separate worlds stacked on top of each other. They are fundamentally different, yet potentially equally valid, ways of apprehending and understanding the single, unified, infinitely rich world we all inhabit. It's about recognizing the multifaceted nature of reality as it is constituted for and in consciousness.
Wow. Okay, so our deep dive into Husserl's Phenomenological Psychology lectures is drawing to a close. We have covered an incredible amount of ground, haven't we?
We certainly have. It's dense stuff.
It really is. We started with that sense of crisis in early psychology, its narrow, naturalistic focus that seemed to miss the mind itself. Then we explored Husserl's call to return to the pre-scientific experiential world, the world of the natural attitude, grounded in that fundamental harmony of experience.
Right, that unspoken agreement that anchors our sense of reality.
Then we uncovered the power of ideation, that amazing method for seeing essences by imaginatively varying examples to grasp their universal a priori nature. Those must be truths that structure possibility itself.
The method of variation leading to the eidos.
Exactly. From there, we use that lens to deconstruct reality, distinguishing self-sufficient things from non-self-sufficient moments, understanding real unity through causality, and grappling with the intricate psychophysical unity of living beings, especially our own unique lived body.
And how the mental shows up beyond bodies, in cultural objects, where subjective purpose gets literally objectified and embedded in the world around us.
Yeah, the chairness in the chair. And then we peeled back the layers of perception itself, the subjective versus objective debate, the role of raw hyletic data being informed by intention, the object as an irreal pole unifying shifting appearances, the crucial role of empty horizons, and the complex temporality of consciousness.
Finally landing on the constitution of the I, the active I pole, defined by its enduring convictions, forming a unique personality. The self-contained monad with its own distinct mode of being, separate from mere physical causality.
It's genuinely a journey that, if you follow it, seems to fundamentally reshape how you understand yourself and the world.
It really does. And it raises an important question for us all, doesn't it? Husserl offers this incredibly rigorous way to understand the very foundations of our knowing. He demonstrates that the subjective isn't something to be discarded or just seen as an obstacle to objective truth.
No, it's essential.
It's an essential, intricate, and constitutive part of how any world, any objectivity, can possibly appear and be constituted for us. It's a method for achieving a kind of certainty, an apodictic certainty, not by ignoring the subjective, but by turning our attention directly to its essential structures, finding the rigorous science within experience itself.
So, what does this all mean for you, listening right now? Well, maybe it means that understanding isn't just about piling up more facts about the world out there.
No, it's also maybe even more fundamentally about deeply investigating the sense of things as they actually appear to consciousness, how they come to mean what they mean for us.
It really invites us, doesn't it, to constantly reflect on the attitudes we take, the assumptions built into our perspectives, and the methods we employ, not just in formal science, but in our everyday lives and how we interpret the world, how we understand other people, how we make decisions. It's a call for a kind of radical self-reflection on how our own consciousness actively shapes the world we inhabit.
A lifelong project, really.
Indeed. And maybe here's a provocative thought to leave you with, something to mull over as you go about your day. If everything we objectively experience, every object, every law, every fact is ultimately constituted within this dynamic web of subjective intentionality.
If it all arises within consciousness.
Does that mean true objectivity isn't about discovering a reality out there that's completely independent of consciousness, but maybe it's more like an ongoing intersubjective project, a project of continually harmonizing and refining our individual perspectives through shared experience and rigorous methods, striving towards an ideal agreement rather than finding a finished thing.
It certainly challenges the naive picture of objectivity, doesn't it? It suggests objectivity is something we achieve together within consciousness, not something we just find ready-made.
A challenging thought indeed. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We truly hope this exploration into Husserl's thought has given you some profound aha moments about the architectures of your own experience.
And perhaps a new lens for looking at the world and yourself within it.
Until next time, keep exploring the depths of knowledge.